Good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to be reading you a bedtime story. I've got my 3 favourite teddy bears, I've got my favourite pyjamas and my nice cosy dressing gown on. Are you all cosy and ready for bed? Shall we see what book we've got? I've got The Adventures of Paddington. Are you ready to listen? Shall we open to the first page? Dear Aunt Lucy, something most peculiar happened to me today. In fact, it seems like things always happen to me. I'm just that kind of bear. I was having afternoon tea with the Browns. Mr. Brown came in carrying a tray of freshly baked scones. Who wants jam and who wants cream? Both, please, shouted Jonathan and Judy. Mr. Brown, began Paddington, who was always incredibly polite. Allow me to help you. Paddington whisked the tray away from Mr. Brown, sending the scones flying and the bowl of fluffy cream spinning through the air. Splat! It landed smack in Mr. Brown's face. Oh dear, let me get that, said Paddington, trying to lick the cream off. We mustn't waste it. Ugh! Cried Mr. Brown. No, it's all right. I'll get a cloth from the kitchen. Sorry, said Paddington, thinking what else he could do. Perhaps I could come and help you with the washing up. In the kitchen, Paddington knocked a teapot off the table by accident. Ah, I really don't need any help, Paddington, Mr. Brown said, diving to catch it before it smashed. Washing up is my chore. What's the chore? Everyone in the family has chores on the fridge, explained Mrs. Brown. Chores are jobs, like doing the laundry or the cleaning. How exciting! I can't wait to read my chores list, said Paddington. Don't be silly, Paddington. You don't need to do any family chores, laughed Mr. Brown. The young bear looked sad. Oh, I thought I was a part of the family, he sighed, wandering off. Mr. and Mrs. Brown hadn't meant to upset Paddington. They called an emergency family meeting and wrote a chores list just for him. It had one thing on it. Make marmalade. But when Mr. Brown went to tell Paddington that he had his very own list, it fell off the fridge. That night, Paddington could barely sleep for excitement. A day of doing chores from my very own list, he thought. It's a dream come true. The next morning, he grabbed the first chores list he saw on the fridge. Clean the bicycle, he read out loud. Sounds very important. Paddington took Mr. Brown's bicycle apart and put it in the bath and gave it a thoroughly good clean with a toothbrush. Scrub, scrub, scrub. When the bicycle was spotless, Paddington put it back together. He couldn't remember where some bits went, but they were only small, so he couldn't imagine they were that important. Later, Mr. Brown came running out of the house late for work. He got on his bicycle and ping, boing, bang, crash, ah! Next on the list was polish the floorboards. Paddington thought that was rather a lot of floor. Surely that meant it needed rather a lot of polish. So he squeezed slick, oily polish all over the floor and began skating, sliding, slipping and, whoa, falling over. The next chore on the list simply said, milk. Paddington wasn't sure what that meant, so he drank all the milk. Glug, 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 glug. Then he headed upstairs to do the final chore. Wallpaper the spare room. That sounds easier, he thought, grabbing a wallpaper brush. As soon as the Browns came home, they stepped onto the highly polished floor and, whoa, slid into an enormous family pile-up. Whose chore was it to polish the floor? asked Mrs. Bird. Before anyone could answer, they heard a loud clatter and rushed upstairs to find Paddington wallpapered to the wall. It was the last thing on my chores list, he mumbled. Oh, you must have taken my list by mistake, said Mr. Brown. Paddington explained he just wanted to be a part of the family. You were always a part of the family, Paddington, said Mrs. Brown. You don't have to do chores to prove that. Mr. Brown helped Paddington down when Judy gasped, Look! And pointed at a drawing behind the peeling wallpaper. You and Jonathan drew that years ago, said Mrs. Brown. It's a picture of the whole family. No, it isn't, said Mr. Brown, picking up a pencil. There, said Mr. Brown, adding a sketch of Paddington. Now it's the whole family. The Browns thought the drawing was absolutely perfect and decided to never wallpaper the room again. It seems there's an awful lot of chores in the world, Aunt Lucy, but being a part of a family isn't one of them. Love from Paddington. The end. Did you enjoy that? I hope you have a lovely night's sleep. I'll see you soon.